We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Thursday. We're moving through the week, and you asked for it. You've been bugging me about this shit. You said you want to hear from Old Soul. Now, Old Soul was just on what, Monday of this past
Mhm.
week. And I was talking to Old Soul while I met her out in Las Vegas. And I said, you come on every week if you want. And she said, cool. I said, okay, cool. So we're going to have Old Soul on more. I'm happy about it. I know you're the fuck happy about it. And Old Soul is back today. So, Old Soul, thanks for coming back. And what a pleasure to meet you in Las Vegas. My wife loves you. And we had a great time getting to know one another in person for once.
Yeah, it was fun. It really was. It just flowed just like it does when we're on Zoom. It's the same thing. I can tell anybody who ever like questions coming on who you are in person, who you are online, what you see is what you get. It's the exact same person. There's no change there at all.
Same shit. And the same could be said for Old Soul, too, if you think, what a nice, wonderful person. And I know that's what you're saying. And so understanding, articulate, intelligent, so compassionate, and not to mention the bedroom voice that was mentioned in the email. It's all the same in person, too. She's very real. And what a pleasure to spend time talking to you. And I think like I say, my wife loved you. I told her when I said when we're going to Vegas, I said, honey, we're gonna meet this woman, Old Soul is her name, which caught her off guard. And I said, she watches the podcast. She's been on the podcast a couple times. I think you'll like her. And she thought, oh fuck. And then when she met you, she couldn't stop talking about you. So I was right, she was wrong, and she couldn't have been happier than to be at lunch. So I win all the way around, which is rare enough. But
Yeah. I told my daughter that we drove past the area where I grew up at, the poorer side.
right.
And she was like, "Really? What did he say?" I was like, "He didn't say anything. He just looked around and wasn't judgmental or anything like that." She's like, "Well, that's so cool."
Well, what's to judge? I mean, I grew up in South Minneapolis. Now, granted, I grew up in a nicer part of South Minneapolis, but I had friends in rougher parts and nicer parts. Doesn't it ain't not, what the rough part of town that you showed me
Mhm.
ain't nothing compared to some of the rough parts of town I've seen. So there's nothing to judge. We're all from some place, and
Yeah,
we all are who we are today in spite of where we came from or what we went through. I mean, we've talked
yeah,
about your life, and you've gone through some struggles like everybody has gone through, but here we are,
yeah,
smart, good looking, and intelligent. We made it
yeah,
through regardless.
yeah.
Well, Old
It's always
Soul.
a good reminder to drive through,
Oh, it
I
is.
always say.
I drive through my old neighborhood from time to time because I'm old and
Hmm.
I'm nostalgic and I get weepy and I go, oh God, I played kickball there. Fuck. But
Yeah.
but no, we had a great time and Old Soul came to the hotel, picked us up. So we went out to eat. She brought us back. It was wonderful. Great service. If you ever go to Vegas
My
and meet with Old Soul,
pleasure.
she offers quite a service. Anyway,
My pleasure.
Anyway, Old Soul, the reason I wanted John here is because the people want John, but I wanted to talk about a few things, one particular. But before we get into that part of it, um, the big news story yesterday was, of course, the Republicans in the House of Representatives voted to initiate an inquiry into the impeachment of Joe Biden. Now, when this started, I wasn't sure that
Hmm.
they would have the votes, but the vote was pretty much
Yeah.
along party lines, and they are going to start the inquiry into the impeachment. What was your thought about that? Did you expect that to go down that way?
I expected them to do it because they didn't have a choice. And then here's the thing about it. The It's not getting the headlines that it should get because of Hunter Biden. It's all been
Right.
about him and his press conference and what he said. That's been played in a loop. It's on repeat. Even the far right wingers are saying how he played the House GOP. So when it came to them taking that vote, they did not have a choice. They didn't. Even the ones that didn't want to do it, the ones who are on record saying there's no proof, they didn't have a choice because he just ran over them. I
Yeah,
mean,
he
how do you
did.
combat what he did?
Well, that's the amazing thing about it. Everything that the Republicans do is performative. There is no
Hmm.
facts or basis in truth or law or justice or anything. It's just all performance. I mean, the whole reason they want to do this impeachment is because the Democrats impeached Joe Biden or Donald Trump,
Yeah.
and they want to say, well, yeah, Donald Trump got impeached, but Joe Biden's just as bad, which is not the case.
Yeah.
Now you bring up Hunter Biden, and that's a good point. I probably should have brought him up first because I thought that was very impressive. Uh,
Very.
Biden was supposed to testify today, and initially they gave him the option: you can do it in public, you can do it behind closed doors. Hunter said, "Cool, cool, I'll do it in public." And they go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait, no, no, we're not going to do it in public because they know they're going to look stupid." And so they said, no, he
Yeah.
couldn't do it in public. So, like you say, instead of showing up and go behind closed doors and fall into that Republican trap, he goes, gives a press conference, talks some shit, and runs right over the top of the Republicans. That had to give you a smile today.
It gave me a smile, not only what he did, but the way he did it. And I appreciate the fact that he didn't give a press conference and then go to the behind closed door meeting, which
Right,
was what I thought he was going to do. Um, because Hunter Biden has been through some things. He's been a drug addict. He's been on the street and he's dealt with some what my grandmother would call low crawlers, right?
right.
He knows a setup when he sees one. And he is not going to walk into a setup. I wouldn't walk into a setup. You wouldn't walk into a setup. And I think the thing about it is they're used to their level of privilege. And so they don't know how to deal with someone who's come from that level of privilege, but actually has had to go through some things as well. So they're not going to handle things the way that Don Jr. would handle them or, that type of thing. So they're not expecting just like a regular down the earth person, they're not expecting what someone like us would do.
I don't want to correct you here, but after being more married 40 years, I can tell you I've
Mhm.
walked into many setups and have not done well. Have not you met Cindy, so I don't fuck around too much with that because I can't help but lose. Um,
Mhm.
so what do you think is going to happen now? They have the opportunity to get him indicted for contempt of Congress, which is ironic
Yeah.
because Jim Jordan didn't show up at all. He kind of he kind of put him in a weird position because he did show up. He was in
Mhm.
Washington D.C. He was at the Capitol. He
Yeah.
said he'd do it, but just not the way they wanted him to do it. So that might give him a little wiggle room when it comes down to a potential indictment. I don't know that they're actually going to make the effort to indict him. Uh, they might try to depose him because they've already talked about that with this new inquiry. They're going to depose all the Biden relatives and all the associates, which isn't going to pay off at all. But I personally think this is what I think Hunter Biden should do. We never heard much from Hunter Biden. So it's real
Yeah.
easy to talk shit about Hunter Biden if he's
Mhm.
under the radar. Oh, Hunter Biden this. Oh, Hunter Biden this. What Hunter Biden should do is go on every fucking TV show, take every opportunity to speak, spill the beans on everything he did, and explain how Joe's not involved. The more he talks, the less valuable he is to the Republican Party.
Only if he's careful with his words, because when you think about the GOP, in particular Trump and Jim Jordan and Comer, um, what's gotten them into trouble, the most trouble, is their mouth.
Right, right.
They
Well,
have
well,
big mouths. They tell what they're gonna do. They say this, they say that. There's no guessing there. There's no trying to figure out what the next move is because you already know. And even with Trump and his trials, the reason that Jack Smith is able to just bypass, the lower levels and go straight to the Supreme Court is because he already knows what Trump's next move is going to be. That's what actual 3D chess looks like.
Right.
And it's the same thing. That's the reason that Hunter was able to go to the Capitol today and make his statement, because he already knew what they were on, because they've been going around blabbing and telling everybody.
Right.
So I think his silence and them not knowing what he's going to do and then doing something unexpected and throwing them off their game, I think that's a good tactic for him.
Yeah, well, that's true. The thing is, I never thought of it that way, but of course, old soul focuses my head in a different situation. And yeah, you make a good point there. The thing about Hunter Biden, though, is Congress can't really do anything to him. He's already got his indictments and charges and stuff. The Congress can't do anything to him. All they're trying to do is use him to get Joe. And if there's
Yeah.
no path to do that, then they've got all kinds of trouble. And since there is no path, they do have that trouble. It'll be interesting to see what Hunter Biden, in fact, does, because Hunter Biden's not an idiot. I mean, he did some stupid shit, but he's a
Mhm.
lawyer. He's a smart guy and fairly articulate. You saw it today when he gave the speech. And let's be honest, Jim Jordan and James Comer, not so fucking bright. You put those
Yeah,
two
and
head to head, it's going to be a problem,
yeah, he even said in his statement his education level.
right?
And he didn't say that for bragging purposes. He said that, these are the universities I went to. This is where I graduated from. I obtained my law license. So I was qualified to sit on this board or to be on this committee and do, like, you know what I mean? So it's not like, oh, I was Joe Biden's son, so I had this nepotism. Well, no, he did, but he was trying to make it look like he earned that position that he was in, when you can't say the same thing about Donald Trump's children. You can't say the same thing about Jim Jordan, who didn't get his license. You know
Right.
what I mean? So he made it an argument that because of his education, that's why he got those positions, and it wasn't anything nefarious going on there. So when you like dive into his statement, everything that he said it for a reason. It was
Right.
very well written.
Yeah, it was
Sound like
very
something I
well.
would have wrote.
Yeah, I know it did. It did. Maybe you should write for Hunter Biden. Well, and the thing about it is if you listen to the Republicans up to this point, they would make
Mhm.
you believe that Hunter Biden was nothing more than a drunk, addled, lazy ass slob. And a
Yeah.
lot of people probably bought into that because that's all they heard. Now they had a
Yeah.
chance to see Hunter Biden, hear
Mhm.
Hunter Biden. Now they've got to step back and take a little different view of who he is.
I don't think they will though. I think they will still try the low level classless attacks that they've been doing, not knowing that millions of people can relate to that. And even if you have no experience with being a drug addict, a lot of people can have sympathy for someone like that. A lot of people can have sympathy for someone who lost his mother and two siblings and
Right.
fell into a drug habit to suppress those emotions and not deal with those. One of the things he said, remember when we were talking at the table and I was saying how they took that relationship that him and Joe worked on so hard to get to that level of supporting him but holding him accountable. When the
Right.
thing he said was they took the light of my father loving me and tried to turn it into something dark. And I was like, oh my God, I just said that to Boomer on Monday. Like it was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's exactly what it is that they're trying to do. They're trying to, take a pretty good relationship that took a lot of hard effort and work to build, and they're doing everything they can to twist it into something that it's not, and that's so disgusting.
Well,
I
and
don't know any other way to say it.
that's as much as Hunter Biden kind of went down the dark path, for
Yeah.
whatever reason he went down that dark path.
Mhm.
Overall, when you look at Joe Biden, politics aside, you look at him and his family, the things they went through. There, it's ironic that Joe Biden be a Democrat and family so important and so
Yeah.
valuable to them, yet the
Mhm.
Republicans claim to be the family first fucking party. And what do we have over there? Donald Trump married three times, kids with
Yeah.
three different wives. One wife is buried in a fucking golf course. So it's quite a contrast between the two.
I'm lucky he didn't bury this his sister that just passed. I'm like, like I'm surprised he didn't bury that poor woman in Mar-a-Lago next to his wife for the tax benefits, but her children, I'm pretty sure they wasn't having that. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the character difference, they're not even close to each other.
And you have to wonder these days in politics, does character really matter? I mean, I think it does,
Good.
but when
Hmm.
we look at some of these people, the character, and I'm talking Republicans and Democrats. If you want to talk about
Yeah.
Democrats, we got Bob Menendez, that
Yep.
fucking criminal. There's a lot of character issues of from people in our Congress or in politics in general, and it is a little disturbing. I mean, because this is what we know about. What about the people we don't know about? There's got to be
Right.
some that are still under the cover of darkness as far as their dark past or their dark present. And it's worrisome. You know, these people are there to try to protect us, work for us, get things for us, and they don't always do it. But God knows what else the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, character for the individuals matter, but the character of the party as a whole matters because that's who is going to provide that check and balance. That's who's going to hold them accountable. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So when you look at George, what's his Santos that just
George
got
Santos.
expelled from Congress, they were saying, "Oh, the president's this, it sets a bad precedent." However, the House of Representatives had already expelled four people before, but what a lot of people don't know is those four people were all Democrats. So the precedents that they're setting is, oh, we don't want to hold our own accountable too. Like
Right.
if Democrats can expel theirs, we don't want to expel ours. But then you have to look at it on the Republican side too and say if you start expelling people like George Santos, there's nobody left in the House of Representatives. You know what I mean? That's when they lose their majority. That's when they have all kind of investigations and stuff going on. So technically they can't hold themselves accountable because of who they are as a whole. Even in the Senate, I think they've expelled like 9 people, all were Democrats except for one. So
Right.
that's the research that I found when I was looking into that presidents that they were talking about.
So what you're saying is Democrats are more accountable for their own people than the Republicans. Republicans will stick with anybody no matter how dirty they are.
Right. Because if they look at that other person, they're going to have to look at themselves.
Right.
So you can say, Trump is evading his taxes, but you're not going to point that out if you're evading your taxes too. So it's kind of like I think George Santos just went overboard with it and he was stealing from them, which was a big part of it. If it was just him stealing from us, he'd have been cool. But he started stealing from them and the donors that give them money. So that's where he had to go.
What's interesting, I saw George Santos a clip while he was on a podcast just recently. And, he's talking about all the dirt he has on his colleagues in Congress, former colleagues.
Mhm.
And he was talking about the adultery in Congress. And, I don't really care about their adultery. But he said, no, you have to understand, you've got people in Congress committing adultery with other people in Congress. And that's
Mhm.
almost incestuous to a certain extent, not in a real sense, but you got two members of Congress having an affair on their wives or husbands. And
Mhm.
and when do you have with all this bullshit they're doing, when do they have time to fucking uh uh pass bills or do fucking anything or govern? It seems like they're doing too much other shit and they ain't governing.
They don't. And I think one of the first things that he said was people give other people their voting pen or their clicker. So when they go to the floor, they're not even there to vote. Somebody else is pushing their button for them or on their behalf. So technically they're not governing. But even on the few days out of the month when they are there, just think about it right now, they're getting ready to go on a 3-week vacation. So
Right.
I mean, and then think about priorities. It's attacking Hunter Biden and trying to impeach Joe Biden over nothing takes precedence over appropriation bills and Ukraine and Israel and Gaza.
And we need a
Why would
budget
you?
passed in a month and nobody's even talked about it.
That's not a priority to them. It's
Right.
Hunter Biden made us look like idiots, which we are. And instead of owning that, we're going to attack him, forget everything else for right now.
Now you
Oh,
said,
and we got to go on vacation first, though.
yeah, they're always on fucking vacation. You said something, and I'm curious to get your take on it because what we were talking about in this vote to make this inquiry into the impeachment of Joe Biden. So I said it
Mhm.
was voted on um, along party lines. So virtually all, not all, but virtually all of the Republicans voted for this inquiry. Now, there's a
Right,
lot of people in the Republican Party that don't want anything to do with MAGA,
right.
and they think they're normal. But this is a MAGA thing. And in spite of the fact they want to separate themselves from MAGA, they voted right in lockstep with these motherfuckers. So the only way I could look at the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives is they're all MAGA. Whether you say you're in the group or not, you side with them, you back them up, you walk together with them, and you do whatever they tell you. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican caucus that says uh, uh, that can say I'm not MAGA because they're all acting like it. But you suggested something where you said they had to do it given the circumstances. Why don't you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, they put the what my grandmother would say about that is you are the company that you keep.
Right,
They're not doing anything to separate themselves from MAGA. They're not speaking out against them. They're not voting against them. They're not saying this is wrong. I'm not going along with that. So they are all MAGA, but they didn't have a choice because they've been telling the base this lie this whole time. And then they called Hunter Biden out and they gave him the option, public or private. He chose public. So that backed them up into a corner to where they had to say, oh, they had to come up with all these different excuses why they had to do it privately, right?
right,
But when they came up with the excuses to make themselves not look like cowards because they just backed out of something, now you have to give the base something else. And the next thing that you can give them, like, what can you give them? Oh, we can give them impeachment. So they didn't have a choice at that point because they had to give the base something. What else was they going to give them?
yeah,
Not lollipops and roses,
right, yeah, exactly,
not the
exactly.
truth.
Well, yeah, they have an aversion to the truth,
Mhm.
and like I say, it's all a performance with them. It seems like they're always backpedaling and always throwing up smoke and mirrors just to cover their ass. I don't know
Yeah.
where they ever get a chance to move forward by simply telling the truth and doing something of value. They really are a party of obstruction and doing nothing. They've done nothing since they've had the majority. And right now, when there are things that need to be done, they don't bother. They're too worried about Biden, Joe, and Hunter, and all the other bullshit. And it gets tiring. I mean, we're paying these people a lot of money to work for us, and they ain't working it.
Yeah, they've radicalized that base to the point to where, you don't believe in facts, you don't believe in science, you don't believe in this. These people shouldn't have rights. And so it's like, what do you believe in? And the
Right,
things that they're telling them to believe in, these people, even though they don't believe it, these people actually do believe it. So the most important thing right now is Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. It's not affordable housing. It's not healthcare. It's not none of that. It's Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. So when you make that the most important thing in these people's lives, you have to do something about that and you have to deliver on it. But the thing that gets them caught up is this a lie. It's not true. So how do you keep these people angry about something that's not true? You either tell them the truth or you act on it. So now
right,
they are going around with this charade impeachment, whatever it is. The only thing I don't think they realize is a lot of people are going to start paying attention because the primaries are coming up. So when they come off of that 3 week vacation, a lot more people are going to be paying attention to politics and a lot of more people are going to see what's going on. Even Comer said he's not going on Fox News anymore because Ducey keeps asking him too many questions.
yeah,
So if
yeah,
you can't handle a softball interview from Ducey on Fox News, and the only place you could give an interview is OAN and Newsmax. How do you think the general public is gonna handle this weirdness? How do you think independent voters are, or true conservatives? Like, how are they gonna handle this? I don't
yeah.
think they're understanding the things that they are getting away with right now during the primary and a general election. They're not gonna be able to get away with that.
No.
And they don't learn from history either. You see what happened with Clinton
Yeah.
or Bill Clinton when they went after him for that impeachment for the affair that he had? His numbers doubled when they did that. And they don't understand that when you attack somebody's character with that crap that they tried to pull, people will make that person a martyr, is what they're trying to make Trump into.
Right.
They're going to do that with Biden. They're going to make Hunter Biden a sympathetic figure. That people are not going to be looking at him like a devil. They're going to be like, oh, look at all the things he overcame. He rebuilt his life, and look what they're doing. So
Right.
it's going to have the opposite effect of what they're doing. The fact that they can't see that, or if they do see it, they're not doing anything to correct that.
People
It's
love
so
people
weird.
people love redemption. And I'm watching
Hmm.
Hunter Biden up there. He's
Yeah,
articulate. He's a good
yeah.
looking guy. That
Hmm.
motherfucker's going to end up on MSNBC. I swear to God, he's going to end up on MSNBC.
Yeah. And it's like, I think even the Republicans who were angry with them for not having an open hearing. And you got to think about these people. They idolize Trump because he's a strong man. He's not afraid of anybody. He calls anybody out. How are they looking at Hunter Biden when he literally goes to the Capitol and he says MAGA Republicans have been asking, and he called them out by name. He literally called them out by name, have been asking, where is Hunter? Well, here I am. Those are his exact words. I'm here. Here I am. So the people who like that strong man mentality, and then you have Jim Jordan and Comer over here, who do you think they're going to gravitate towards a little bit more than that? You know what I mean? So they're not understanding what they're doing to themselves.
No, I think you got a good point there. I think that you're right, and I hadn't even considered that, but I think that Hunter Biden is going to get some positivity out of this just by
Mhm.
virtue of who he is and how he talks. Everything with the Republicans is just so shady. And
Yeah,
even though Hunter Biden has a shady past, I think they will still like him. I mean, that people want to like the underdog, and Hunter Biden is the epitome of the underdog. And who made him the underdog?
they
Before
did.
before the Republicans, he was just another former addict trying to get out of his shitty life. Now
Hmm.
he's getting out of his shitty life, and now they're going to make him a hero. They're not going to change over the base,
Yeah,
but all those people in the middle that's saying, yeah, fuck Hunter Biden. Now they're going to see Hunter Biden and go, hey, he doesn't seem that bad. Yeah, I think you're
yeah.
absolutely right about that.
They're not going to make the base like Hunter Biden, but they're not going to make the base back them up or respect them either. How many times can they break a promise of we're going to have open hearings, we want transparency, and then you have to come up with all these lies and try to convince these people that I've been telling you for months that we're going to have transparency, but we can't do it this time, or we
Right.
don't want to do it that. Like, you have to think about things before you say them. And even if I didn't think Hunter would testify, I would have to ask myself, okay, what if he does testify? You know what I mean? Like, I would ask that before I give him those choices.
Well, it's kind of like uh, when that lawyer from New York, what was his name? Oh, the guy that quit from Alvin Bragg. When Alvin Bragg took over, he quit. He's a
Oh,
serious Pomerantz.
hmm.
He was a serious fucking lawyer. And
Yeah,
they wanted him to testify, and he said, "No, I don't want to testify." So they subpoenaed him, and they got him there. And I thought to myself, be careful what you fucking ask for, because you dumb motherfuckers are going to be run around the ring by this guy who has some intelligence. And that's
yeah.
what you don't have to be a genius to be a member of Congress
Or a Republican.
or a Republican in general. No, you don't. And clearly people like Matt Gaetz and James Comer and Jim Jordan, they all, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they all prove that every fucking day. But
Yeah,
it would be entertaining to see them talk to Hunter Biden in public, because I think Hunter Biden would completely flummox them. I mean, anybody, you or I could confuse them enough to make them look stupid if we were on the stand. And James and Jim, if you want me to come on the stand, I'm available, man. I'll even pay for the flight. and I won't really pay for the flight because my wife works for an airline, but I'll get out there.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between being smart and being educated.
Yeah, true.
And with them, even though they have their accolades and they went to this school and that school, it kind of seems like they're the people who had other kids taking their tests for them. Like they didn't put in any work, they didn't earn anything, they didn't soak up any knowledge. We know that's how it was for Jim Jordan because push come to shove on his own, he couldn't even pass the bar.
Right.
So it just feels like they just thought that their privilege could just make them smart.
I
Money
don't.
doesn't make you smart. Just because you have money doesn't mean that you're smart. It doesn't mean that you are qualified to be in the position that you were given. Like you didn't do anything to earn that position. So what makes you think that you can hold your own against somebody like Swalwell or AOC? I don't,
There, there,
it's
there
so
was
weird.
there was a book in the 60s or 70s. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, and I don't know that much about it. I just know a little bit, but it was called the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle is that you rise to your own level of incompetence, meaning you're good at something, so you rise and you rise and you rise up until the point you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Donald Trump is a perfect example of that. These members of
Yeah.
Congress, these Republicans, the Jim Jordan, James Comer. I mean, these are people, if they walked into your office and you ran a warehouse, you'd go, no, bitch, you're not smart enough to work here.
Yeah, the only difference with that is, and I don't know how it was in the 70s or at the time that the book was written, but it seems like they rise to that level of competence and then you would think they would hit the wall,
You would think
but
so.
they have money and they have privileges that the rest of us don't. So they can kind of buy themselves up above that wall. So that's how they end up in positions that they are woefully unqualified to be in.
Well, that happens a lot. I used to work for a Department of Transportation, and they had a
Hmm.
culture there that all engineers, civil engineers, were management level, which made no sense because I work with these kids that were student workers and working their
Hmm.
ass off to get engineering degrees. I mean, killing themselves. It's hard. So they get the engineering degrees, they get the job at the DOT, they immediately put them in management where they don't need their engineering skills at all. They have people under them that maybe engineers are not doing the work for them. And over and
Yeah.
above that, if you know any engineers, they're not real personable. They're more introspective. They're more introverted. Those aren't the
Hmm.
kind of people you want to put in management. Not all are like that, but that happens a
Right.
lot in business and in government. People rise up because they put in their time or they know somebody and they get to a point where they're really not qualified to do that particular job. They were rewarded with the job, but they
Yeah.
can't do the job.
Right. Or I've been in positions too at my last job where we had like two managers, but anytime someone had a question, they would be, "Hey, oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" To
Right.
try to figure it out. And it's just because the managers, or they would ask a manager and they would be like, "Oh, well, go ask O," or they'll send me an email and ask, I'll explain it, and then they'll relay the message. So I think that it's true, and I think all of us know people in positions like that who should not be there. And it doesn't matter what job you hold. You
Well,
could
it's
be
kind
at Walmart and have a manager, and you're like, you probably shouldn't even be qualified to clean the restroom.
exactly. And well, you may have gotten that grasp from my wife. She's a former teacher. She works in an
Hmm.
airline. She's only worked there 2 years. She knows her stuff. She's kind of in control because she's used to wrangling fourth grade kids. Um,
Yeah.
but when she's walking around, people who are new to working at the place, if they have a question or if have a problem, they always go to the old white woman because she must be the boss. Now, she's not the boss, but she
Hmm.
knows enough to help them, much like the situation you're doing. When I used to work in radio, you'd have managers and salesmen and disc jockeys and stuff. If you really wanted to know what the fuck was going on and you wanted to get something done, you went to the secretary, the woman sitting in the front
Yep.
desk, because she knew
Hmm.
fucking everything and she could straighten everything out. And if the boss got out of hand, she'd straighten his shit out too.
Yeah, the administrative assistants, I don't know why they think they hear assistant and that they just assume they don't know anything, but typically they are up to date on the calendar. They know inside and out the workings of what's going on. I think people just have a real problem with labels and titles, when it doesn't always, the person that's in that title or that position doesn't always reflect the position, if that makes sense.
Well, and that seems to come, you would think that's the way it is in Congress too. You have all
Mhm.
these people that are the figureheads and all the
Yeah.
people underneath them, the interns, the aides, the assistants, they know what the fuck is up. All they
Yep.
do is get this person ready to stand in front of the camera and let them know what's up. The real people
Hmm.
doing the work are below them. It's like going into a doctor's office and talking to a nurse for an hour and then having
Yeah.
the doctor come in and say, yeah, that doesn't look good, and leave. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems to be common practice in almost everything we have.
You can definitely tell it in the House of Representatives because senior staffers,
Yeah.
they don't work for Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. I don't know where they get their staffers from, but they are not qualified because you can tell with the level of questioning that they have. They don't know the answer to the question before they ask it. And so that's how they keep getting caught off guard, like Lauren Boebert and this whole urination fascination that she has. And it's so weird. But when she asks those questions and they give the answers, she's like shocked. But it's like your staff should have been preparing you for the responses.
Right.
Versus if you see like AOC, how prepared she is, her staffers have her prepared. They're reading those documents, they're putting everything together for her. So you can really tell the difference of who has good staffers and who doesn't. Even
Yeah.
they don't even have answers to some of the questions. They are literally running away from questions
Yeah,
that's being
absolutely.
asked for them.
Yeah. AOC is a 35-year-old woman. She's young enough to be my kid.
Yeah.
And I feel confident in a debate with most people. I wouldn't fuck with her. She'd tear me to shreds.
Yeah. She's always prepared. And I think, but she has a whole staff that helps her with that.
It,
And then also, I'm pretty sure that she picks her staff very carefully. She's
yeah.
not just, like if I was in Congress, as smart as my daughter is, I wouldn't have her as a staffer because she likes to do things on her own time. But I think she's careful who her staffers are. And other people, I'm pretty sure they just are doing favors for someone, giving them a title or whatever, and it's not working out for them.
What's interesting? I get a lot of people telling me, and it's silly, but people say, you should run for office. You should do this. And that's a bad idea. I'd be a horrible politician because I don't listen to shit. I'm not diplomatic. I don't like shitty long meetings. I speak my mind. I'm totally the opposite. But you know what? As I'm sitting here listening to you, you could be a politician. You'd fit that mold perfectly and you'd do some serious shit. Who's this younger woman now that's in the House of Representatives that's tearing everybody up? God, what is her
Val,
name?
you would be good. You'd be like Fetterman because he's pretty much the
Oh,
same way.
thanks.
He's pretty much the same way.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd get anything done, because when you're one pebble pushing against a mountain, it's hard.
Mhm.
That's why I think it's always been better to be on the outside, stirring the shit up and getting people educated and annoyed and pointed at what's going on. I think I could
Yeah.
do more from the outside than I can do from the inside. But you might be a different story. I bet you all the people in this audience right now are going, yeah, it's a fucking good idea. She should be a rep from Nevada.
There's certain people in Congress that I do not have the stomach for. Um, I've never been to jail. I don't have any type of record, and I'm not trying to go. So I should just stay away from the halls of Congress. I don't have the stomach or the patience for those type of people. I don't. And I don't know a diplomatic way to deal with them either.
So what you're saying is that's not the crowd of people you want to hang out with.
Nope. I'm the
Yeah.
company that I keep, and having to be forced to be around certain people, I don't think I could do it. I could probably be a staffer, but as far as being in meetings and especially seeing and hearing that some of these people are completely different behind closed doors than they are in front of the cameras,
Hmm.
I would probably tell all of their business. Oh, we was just in a meeting and so said this and said that. I don't know why he's telling you this, that, and the third. I would have to call them out quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Well, and that's the problem I think both you and I would have, more so you, because talk shit. But if you were a politician, then there'd have to be a part of you that would be willing to lie. And I just don't
Yeah.
get that you're willing to lie under any circumstance.
So if you're asking me, I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah. And people don't typically like that. You
No.
ever get pushback for being blunt or straightforward?
I don't think so, and I think it's just because of my voice.
It probably because of your voice, because you're a calm young woman. Me,
Yeah.
on the other hand, I say some shit. What the fuck do you mean? So I have to be
I've
cautious about it.
I've said like disrespectful things to someone here or there, and maybe like by the time I make it home, I'll get a phone call like, "Hey, did you say this, that, and the third?" Like, "Oh, it just now dawned on you what I said." But yeah, sometimes
Well,
I can get away with it.
the one thing I'm protected by saying shitty things to people who deserve to hear shitty things is I tend to be a bit of a smartass and be sarcastic. So if I say some shit to somebody, immediately they think, he's just joking. He's being a smart ass. But when in my heart, I really mean it. So they don't have to suffer through what I said, and I get it off my chest. It's a win win for fucking everybody. You're
There
a
you go.
dickhead. You're a dickhead. I feel better. Let's move on.
That's your cloak, sarcasm.
It is. It really is. It is. And I look at my little granddaughter and I'm thinking, God, she's a lot like me. They're in for some
Hmm.
trouble because I wasn't an easy kid. I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't an easy kid.
You
Anyway,
know, you kept your parents on their toes.
I
That's all.
did. I did. Well, old, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to talk about the main reason I wanted you to come on because you have uh, a unique insight to this topic. And what we're going to be talking about is this thing down in Texas with this woman who needs an abortion, and their Texas is fucking with her. And you offered some insights when we were having lunch, and as I'm doing the show here, and I remember our conversation, I go, you know what fucking pisses me off more than anything? I'm looking at this woman. I'm thinking, I'm Mr. Hotshot with the podcast. Old is way smarter than I am. She's telling me shit. I'm going, what? That makes sense. Though I appreciate the education you're giving me here. We'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul is joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have her with us here on the podcast. It's always a pleasure to have all the listeners on. Ed makes my job so much easier because I've got somebody to talk to as opposed to myself. Uh, but this is something old. This is something we talked about in the last time you were on the show, and I think it's worthy of maybe expanding on it a little bit. You have a uh, unique insight to this whole abortion issue, overturning Roe v. Wade, states making abortion illegal. Uh, she stated it before, and
Hmm.
we can have her expand on it again. But basically, Old Soul is very sympathetic to those women who are in a position that need abortions but live in a state that where it's illegal. And she not only talks the talk, but she walks the walk. People she doesn't know, women will come from out of state, a state where it's illegal to have an abortion. She'll open her door, let these people stay with her. She'll feed them. She'll do whatever, drive them around. She'll do all that stuff. And that's what Old Soul does. And that's one reason why Old Soul is a much better person than I am, because I don't know that I would do that. But what I wanted to bring up is something we talked about before, and it's becoming a really shitty situation. Old, we have this woman. I think her name is Katie Cox. She's in Texas. She needs an
Yeah.
abortion, but it's illegal in Texas. The baby's not going to survive. She may not have children or maybe even get sick herself from this whole pregnancy. So she went to court.
Yeah.
And the judge said, sure, in this instance, in these circumstances, you can have the abortion. Well, then, Attorney General, whatever the fuck his name is, the biggest criminal in the country, says, now we won't have that. Took it to the Supreme
Paxton.
Court. I'm sorry?
Paxton.
Paxton, yeah, Ken Paxton. Uh, and they took it to the Supreme Court and they overturned it. So now here's this poor woman in dire need of an abortion for legitimate reasons. And Texas is doing everything they can to shut her down, and they have. And now we hear she may go out of state. And I got to think there might be some retribution when she comes back to Texas. But I wanted to get a sense of your whole take of
Yes.
that situation. And I get a sense it's not that unusual in spite of the fact that it's in the news.
No. I think I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like the world is getting a view of what a lot of us behind the scenes see on.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, it's not irregular. It's just that I don't think people realize how brave she was to speak up. From my understanding, she's already left the state to have the procedure because she had been in and out of the hospital a couple of times.
Right.
So there was no like no time to appeal it or do anything to that effect. Um, her attorneys are being tight-lipped about where she went, who she's staying with, who's doing the procedure, but when she goes back home, I don't know what the consequences is gonna be for her. That's why a lot of women don't speak up, and they're not cowards or scared or anything in that mean, but the consequences and what could really happen to them if they are found out is $10,000 fines. Certain states are up to life in prison, anywhere from 10 years to life, just depending on the state that you're in. If you people don't realize either, if you have a child who has been assaulted and you take them out of state to get an abortion and they find out, you could have that child taken away from you in addition to facing charges and going to prison and paying fines on top of that. So
I
it's
mean,
not uncommon. I think what's uncommon about her situation is she was willing to speak out about it publicly with her own name, which is incredible.
well, and I think it's not only brave, but it's important. Somebody doing what she's doing is the first
Yeah,
step to fixing it. Well, as long as it's under the cover of
yeah,
darkness and they can do this draconian shit without anybody knowing all the nitty-gritty details, they're going to keep doing it. Somebody steps up
yeah,
like that and sacrifices
yeah,
like she has, that's the opportunity when there's change because people will now see it. We know that 70, 75% of the people in this country support Roe v. Wade, yet places like Texas go against what the people think and shove this down people's throats. But now that these people who support
yeah.
Roe v. Wade see this and see how the government reacts, I don't understand their mindset because it's going to cost them votes. There's no question about it. And hopefully these people will use their power of vote and get these motherfuckers out of there.
Yeah, and someone wrote a letter the other day, I can't remember the name, but you did read it, where he asked what happens, or she may have asked, what happens when all of the OBGYNs flee those states?
Right.
That's already happening.
Is it?
In my state, we used to wait. I could call, do my annual PAP, maybe 2.5 months waiting period. Now I might have to wait a couple of weeks. They do leave those states and they go to blue states. And part of the reason is they cannot provide medical care to women. It goes against the oath that they've taken.
Right.
In addition to that, if you look at a state like Texas, I think last year they had like 50,000 abortions, which if you think of a DNC, a DNE, those are all abortions, even though, some people don't recognize those as abortions. Like what this woman needed, technically, it's an abortion.
Right.
But they went from 50,000 to this year, I think like 35.
Okay.
Um, so the doctors go to states where women can actually come and then they can do those procedures in those states.
Well, and if
And
you're
I
a
was hearing someone say, this is so crazy, but it's so true. Like these, abortion people have a whole underground railroad system going on, which
yeah,
we kind of do. And that's the reason why they are pushing for a national ban because the states have figured out that there are women like me in other states that will help these women get the health care that they need. So even though those abortions have gone down in Texas, they've gone up in my state and other blue states. So women are still getting the care, especially now that word is spreading about different organizations that can help them. So now they're like, oh, we can't stop them. So now we have to make it national because on a local level, we can't put a stop to it.
Now, because I'm known to be sarcastic, I have to preface what I'm going to say as I don't mean it
Hmm.
as a joke. I mean it as a legitimate compliment of sorts. And I hear about the things you're doing and helping these women do these things. You're like a modern day Harriet Tubman in that respect. And I'm not trying to compare that to slavery, but the point is
Yeah,
these women are in trouble. They're in danger. Their lives are
yeah.
in danger. And when
Mhm.
you talk about the doctors and such, not only can't they do what they are supposed to do or what they feel they're supposed to do, they also risk legal ramifications, serious legal ramifications. So why stay there?
Legal and yeah, not only the legal part, they can have their license taken and they could be stripped of their medical insurance and you cannot practice without medical insurance.
Right.
So if a doctor does a procedure um and the someone sues the doctor, their insurance has to pay out. And the insurance is not going to want to keep making these payouts, so they can lose their insurance as well. Um, which is pretty disgusting when you think about it.
It is.
In Texas, a lot of people don't know that there is a case. There was a woman, she was a corrections officer. She was 7 months pregnant and she was at work and she was wanting to leave. And they wouldn't let her leave. And she kept saying she's feeling like she's having contractions, but they wouldn't let her leave. So when she finally was able to get off and get to a hospital, she had a miscarriage. So she's suing the state of Texas. And do you know what their defense is? Mr.
What
Paxton's defense is for her
what's that?
that there's no proof that the fetus, he's not saying baby now, fetus had any kind of body autonomy, I think is what he called it. So basically, he's saying this was not a real person. This was a fetus.
Wow. I mean, it goes to, people say this in jest, but they want to they want to call a fetus a human at conception, right?
Mhm.
If that is true,
Yeah.
again, I'm not being sarcastic here, but it hits
Hmm.
home with politicians where they live. If a fetus is a human at conception, we should be able to write them off as a tax write-off.
Yeah. But I think like a lot of people are thinking that the laws are so vague
Right,
so that women cannot get abortions, which that's part of it. But the other part of keeping the laws vague is to protect themselves from lawsuits as well. So like the woman who was the correction officer who lost her baby, they can say that this was not a person. You know what I mean? So you can't sue us for a fetus
right.
versus you can sue us for a baby. So they keep the laws vague to protect themselves from lawsuits, and also to stop women from having abortions at the same time. So it's twofold with those laws. And then I was telling you, there's another woman not too long ago that stayed here. And she was talking about people they understand the physical part, but they don't understand the emotional part as well as the financial part.
Right,
Because they will go to a hospital or a doctor, and the doctor will say, well, you're not sick enough yet. You need to be like minutes away from death before we can perform this procedure. But if you wait until that time, you have to take an ambulance ride to the hospital. And I think in her state, a ride to the ambulance with no care, no IVs, no extra equipment or anything is like $1,021. But if they're in the back of an ambulance and they're performing life-saving measures, that cost goes up. And
right,
her insurance does not cover ambulance rides. On top of that, if you get there, you have to think about life support. You have to think about ventilators. You have to think about the procedure itself. And she was even saying when she was pregnant, they had their financial part mapped out. But when she found out that her pregnancy was non-viable, now she's solely responsible for the finances of this because her husband's insurance will only take care of the baby if it's born alive,
right.
basically. So they actually discussed, okay, so we should try to get like a really quick divorce just in case I have to go down this route. only I'm responsible for the hospital bills and we're not responsible for it as a married couple. And then we can kind of try to thrive off of your credit because at this point we're not going to be able to afford these hospital bills. I'll let it be under my name and ruin my credit. But if we could divorce, we could still keep your credit good. Like they were really thinking about the financial consequence of her having to wait until she was almost dead to go to the hospital.
It's absolutely ridiculous to think about this, how draconian it is. You got to be on death's door before
Yeah,
you can get your own kind of medical help. This sounds like a third
yeah,
world country where you can't
yeah.
get help, but you've got to be sick enough to justify getting medical help, whether that be an abortion or whatever. And I don't think you were born and you haven't been alive at any time when abortion wasn't legal. What was it, like
Mhm.
70 or 72 or something like that? I was alive and
Yeah.
I was a little kid. I didn't know shit from shit. But but
Mm.
as somebody who's never seen a world without legalized abortion, how does somebody your age perceive this? I mean, it's like going from normal life and decency to the most draconian, most brutal fucking laws that anybody could ever imagine.
It's pretty shocking. As a woman, you do feel attacked. Even though I don't see myself having any children in the future, I do think about my nieces. I think about my daughter if that's something that she chose to do.
Yeah,
I think about like the different positions that it could put them in. And I don't take any comfort in feeling like I'm in a blue state. I don't take comfort in that because I know that if there's not enough Democrats that win the next election, there could be a national ban. They could be at risk. And then what states are these women are going to go to? Or and then now they're fighting contraceptives. So, you know what? How do you feel safe knowing that they're trying to push this on everyone? They're literally trying to shove it down your throat. And I don't think even I've seen from a woman's perspective, but I've also seen men struggle whose wives or girlfriends or daughters who stayed here. Because when you grow up in like a Christian home or evangelical home, you're taught that you're the provider, the protector, and you have a certain mindset.
right,
But when you're put in a position to where you can't protect them, it kind of it's very hard for them to deal with that, especially when you come from a culture where you're not supposed to show your emotions. It's
right.
very difficult for them to deal with. In addition to that, some of these women already have children. And so you have to have conversations with your spouse or your partner and say, if I die from this or if I don't make it, how are you going to support and take care of the children that we already have on your own? And just think about being a husband or even you just being a father or a grandfather and them sitting down saying, hey, if I don't survive this, can you help my husband raise my children? Like
Yeah.
that's it really it's just a ripple effect to people don't talk about the men that go through this with their partners, but they struggle with it just like we struggle with it. And being my age and even younger, for men to try to understand that they would be put in a position to where they can't protect their spouses. It's traumatizing for them as well.
It's really horrific to imagine that in this country, in this day and
Mhm.
age, this is the shit that's going on. I mean, it's
Yeah.
barbaric, really. It's
Mhm.
absolutely barbaric, and we've got one party shoving it down our throats in spite of the fact the majority
Yeah.
of the people in this country are against what they want to do. Uh, it makes you
Yeah.
question how our government runs and the fact that it's not running properly. It's not working.
Mhm. And then I was gonna email you about Brittany Watts. I don't know if you heard about her, but the Texas case overshadowed hers.
Hmm.
Um, but she's a Black woman. She's 33. No record. And I shouldn't have to say that she doesn't have a record because this has nothing to do with it. But I'm pretty sure that these prosecutors were looking for something in her background and
Right,
they couldn't
right,
find anything because she didn't have a record. But she was 22 weeks pregnant and she's in Ohio. She goes to the hospital twice. They let her know that her fetus is non-viable. However, because of the laws there, even though the pregnancy is non-viable, they can't do the procedure. I think she had to be like septic or something first before they could do it. So she went home. She went back to the hospital. Like she went to the hospital twice. It's documented she was there and everything. So she just said, okay, I guess I can't go to the hospital for help. She ends up going to use the restroom and the baby like comes out when she's using the restroom. Now she's being charged with abuse of a corpse.
Wow.
It just went to the grand jury. I think either on the 8th, I think it went to the grand jury to see if she's going to get those charges.
Wow.
And these are all felonies that she faced. And by the way, 33-year-old, no record, went to the hospital twice, was turned away, passed the fetus in the toilet at home, and is now being charged with abuse of corpse
You know,
because the fetus clogged up the toilet.
it's hard for an old white guy like me to understand the trials and tribulations of people, minority folks or women. It's one thing to in my chair here and try to imagine what's going on for other people, but what you just described has got to be an absolute nightmare for a woman who's really done nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong, and now her whole
Yeah,
life is in flux because she doesn't know what they're going to do to her, and she didn't do anything wrong. That should not
yeah.
happen in this country.
She went to the hospital twice for help, and both times, she was turned away from from getting the help that she needed.
Wow. But you brought up the contraception thing, and
I
we
do
know.
have,
Go ahead.
I have this her part of the article. I just brought it up on my phone, and it's just a small part. Investigators said they found a baby stuck in a toilet at Watt's home on September 22nd. She said she felt the baby come out and there was a big splash, said Detective Nick Carney with the police department, forensic psychologist, whatever. Dr. Servants testified, he's the guy that did the autopsy, that he found no injuries to the fetus and the unborn fetus had died before passing through the birth canal. He said Watt's medical records show she visited the hospital twice before the delivery. The fetus was going to be non-viable. It was going to be non-viable because she had premature ruptured membranes. Her water had broken early, and the fetus was too young to be delivered.
Wow.
So the forensic guy that did the autopsy on the fetus said the baby was already dead. Her water had broke at 22 weeks. He's saying there was nothing she could do. The baby was dead before it hit the toilet water, as gruesome as that sounds.
And and
And
and
now she's
and she
being
wasn't trying
charged
to
with abuse of a corpse.
and she wasn't trying to hide it either. It sounds like when this happened, she probably called the authorities. She did what she's supposed to do.
Yeah, she went to the hospital. She went to the hospital twice, and the article that I read, because I wanted to hear what the prosecutors were saying, and it seems like what the prosecutors are saying is it took her too long to like call authorities. And when they got there, the baby was stuck in the toilet, so they were trying to make it sound like she was trying to flush the baby down the toilet. The good thing about this is, I don't know if you know who Benjamin Crump is, but he's a
Yeah.
really big civil rights attorney.
Yeah.
He is already in Ohio helping her out, and they have a GoFundMe. So I've been thinking about her all day since I seen her press conference, because I was like bawling when I seen this woman, because she was so distraught she could barely talk of what she just went through. Um, so I'm hoping that the grand jury can do what legislators and the prosecutors didn't do, which is to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, Benjamin Crump.
But I do take comfort knowing that Benjamin Crump is there. I do take comfort in that.
Well, and Benjamin Crump spent a lot of time in Minnesota when the George Floyd situation happened. He was
Yeah.
here representing the families and such, and yeah, wow. I mean, it's one thing to go through this whole thing with the abortion.
Thank you for allowing me to read that. I appreciate it.
Old, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm never gonna stop you. You start talking, I shut up. But I mean, just having gone through that experience, separate from any legalities or or legislators or anything, just going through that experience she did in that bathroom, that in itself is incredibly traumatic. You're going to complain about how she
Yeah.
reacted after that happened? How does anybody react after a fucking trauma?
Yeah. After being turned away from the hospital twice. And then they did a forensic autopsy, and it's clear as day this when she went to the hospital and they told her this is non-viable, they knew and they turned her away, but they didn't have a choice. What were they supposed to do? Do the procedure and get arrested, get fined, get their medical insurance stripped away from them, get their medical license stripped away from them? Um, eh, the women that I see that are in these situations, fortunately, they get to me before it gets to this type of situation.
Well,
But just to know that she didn't have the resources to get somewhere where she could get the help that she needed, and now she's going through this.
well, I think you
It's
make a
enough to
good
tear you up at night.
I think you make a good point. You know, you tell this story about this one woman, but it sounds to me from what you've
Mhm.
told me and the experiences you've had and other people around the country, this is happening a lot. It's not just one woman or two women or
It
10
is.
women. It's
Yeah.
hundreds, maybe thousands of women
Mhm.
that are going through it. Maybe not to this extent, but they're going through their own trauma, dealing with the situation and not getting any help from medical or
Yeah.
legal. They're doing everything they can to force these
Yeah.
women to the precipice of death before they even think of fucking helping them. You
Yeah.
brought you
And then
brought
they have to suffer in silence.
Yeah. Well, you brought something up when we were talking at lunch that I hadn't thought about, and I thought, fuck, they're just the legislatures are just gaming this situation. There are some states that will say, "Oh yeah, we have extenuating circumstances or situations where there are exceptions." You explain to me how those
Yeah.
exceptions really aren't exceptions. Go ahead and tell the folks. I think people will
Yeah.
be amazed. When you said what you said, I thought, fuck, you can't win.
Yeah. No, there's exceptions to exceptions, or you can say the exceptions have caveats. So if you have a child who's been assaulted by a relative or a stranger, doesn't matter, they've been assaulted, and they say that in order for you to have an abortion, you have to like prove that she's been assaulted. So you go to the police department, you file a police report, and then they will come to you and they will say, well, the perpetrator hasn't been convicted of anything yet. So now you have to wait for this person to be tried and convicted of assaulting your child. But by the time that happens, the baby is already here. So why would you say that there's an exception for incest and rape where the rapist or the person committing the incest has to be prosecuted and convicted first? So
So,
technically, the exception for incest and rape is just a piece of paper. It means nothing,
so,
nothing at all.
so that exception is no exception at all. And that's what I mean. We get
No
politi-
exception at all.
we get politicians coming out and saying, "Oh, we have exceptions. We're not animals."
Mhm.
And then you tell us this story that,
Yes.
okay, yeah, they have to be reported to the police. Okay, cool. But now they got to be convicted. And when you
Mm.
have a trial that could last a year, 2 years, clearly the baby's going to be born before
Yeah.
then. So that exception is of no value to this woman. It's fucking ridiculous. They know
Yeah.
exactly what they're doing, and they're gaming the system to
Yeah.
their own benefit and hurting women and men for that matter and the children, just so they can make a fucking point.
Yeah. They say exceptions to trick voters.
Right.
I've had women who stay with me they've said like, well, there was an exception for the life of the mother. And then they didn't realize that their doctors couldn't tell them that they were sick enough to get an abortion. It actually has to be a judge or the DA or the Supreme Court or however far they want to take it to tell you, okay, yeah, now I'm going to give permission to your doctor to do the procedure. So if I lived in Texas, Ken Paxton is the man who gets to tell me if I'm sick enough to have an abortion. No matter what my licensed doctor says, the judge isn't a medical professional. Ken Paxton isn't a medical professional. None of these legislators are medical professionals, but these are the people who get to tell my doctor, okay, now you can do the procedure. I have
Right.
to prove to them that I'm sick enough to get the procedure. And I prove that through my doctor and my medical records. But they can easily say, yeah, but that's still not good enough,
Yeah. I know you're very compassionate.
unfortunately.
I know you're very passionate about this, and I understand why. And I appreciate there are people like you that put in the extra work and want to help, you know, create this underground railroad of sorts to help women in need because apparently their government and their legal authorities aren't willing to help them at all. Uh, I can understand how you
They're
think.
lying to these women and they're lying to these women and they're tricking them. A lot of these women would not vote for the people that they vote for if it wasn't for the exceptions. And by the
Right.
time they learn about the exceptions, it's too late.
So the only thing you can really do is bring this shit to light, give it a higher
Mhm,
profile like Katie Cox is doing. I mean, it's
mhm.
very, very much a risk for her to do this, but that's what it's going to take to
Yeah,
get changes here. I mean, what's going on is just
yeah.
unbelievable that that would happen in this country. Do you think by bringing it to light like this, we will get the change ultimately? We won't get it fast enough because it will be based on elections, but do you think that will be enough for these people that have been tricked or hoodwinked about these exception bullshit? Do you think we'll ever get them to understand that they're being lied to?
It will if it stays in the public eye. So we're hearing about, well, Brittany Watts, who I just told you about, most people don't even know who she is. They don't even know her name.
Yeah.
But women like Cox in Texas, who is able to get the headlines, and people are aware of her case. She did go national with her case. If we can get more people like that to remain in the headlines, but it seems like people forget fairly quickly. We just need these type of things to remain in the minds of people,
How often do
in
you hear these
particular
stories?
men, because I don't think women are going to forget, but we need men to understand what's going on a daily so they can join forces with us because it's a lot of men who, especially conservative men, they're all about small government. They don't want the government in their bedroom. And they do take comfort in the exceptions as well. But, they tend to kind of like push it back a little bit. And we have to keep, like typical men, you got to keep reminding them of what's going on.
Yeah. As sad as it is, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Now, these stories of these individual women, every time you come on,
Yeah.
you have a story like that. Is this something, these kinds of stories you hear all the time? These individual
Oof.
stories?
I hear it quite often. There's only a small percentage who are like, oops, I messed up, teen pregnancy, young, that type of thing.
Right.
Most of them are medical necessities. I do have a small percentage of minors. Um, Not every week, thank God, but when I get those cases, they they hit a little different. But most of the time, it's just women who need medical care, honestly. There's
Right.
no woman who is trying for a pregnancy or who wants a baby and is 7 months, 6 months along. They've had a baby shower, they put their nursery together, they've told their families and friends, they're going back and forth on what they want to name the baby, and then just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I want an abortion.
Right.
That doesn't
Right.
happen. Republicans want you to think that's what's happening, and it's pretty insulting that they would think that women
Yeah,
do that
it
because we
it
don't.
it really is. Well, what I was gonna bring up is since Old Soul's gonna be on a regular basis, I'm more than happy to have her on anytime she wants, but at the very least, it would be wonderful to have you on every week, and if we can do that, what I'd like to do, uh, is when you have those stories, whatever we're talking about, politics, whatever, we should at least bring one of those stories to light. So it's making people aware. I understand we have a little podcast here. We're just a minor ripple, but we all have to do something. And if we can get these
Yeah,
stories out to people who then get stories out to people and so forth, maybe we can help something because these kinds of
yeah.
things need to be known because that's the only way we're going to stop it.
Mhm. The women would definitely appreciate that. Anytime I tell, like, anyone's story or anything, when you upload the podcast, I'll be sure to share it with them and, get their opinions, make sure I did justice by telling their story. But most of the time, I don't have, like, their real names, and I don't blame them because they can face real consequences for that. Um, but they don't really go on camera and show their faces,
Yeah.
especially when they have children at home, they have a job, they're a part of a church and, most likely it's just the woman and her partner who knows what's going on, and they keep it a secret. So,
Well, I don't think we
they
need
do
their
appreciate anybody who is talking about it.
I don't think we need their real names or anything specific about them,
Mhm.
but the stories you're telling are
Yeah,
so horrific, they need to be told. It doesn't matter
yeah,
who it is or what their name is. The fact that our government and our legal system is doing this to them, we need to bring it to the light of day and keep putting it in front of people's faces so they understand. I mean, it's like advertising, you know? If you
yeah,
if you're selling gum and I say, "Hey, buy the gum." um, you're not going to buy the gum. But if every show, twice a show, I say buy the
yeah,
gum, you go, fuck, I might buy the gum. It's got to be always in front of their face. That's one of the reasons I do a show every night. When I was first started doing this, I
yeah,
thought, people do it once a week, twice a week, and that's easy enough to do. But if you really want to make a presence and you really want to gain an audience quickly or get people's attention, you got to be there all the time. And that's why I'm saying whenever
yeah,
you come on, let's talk about some of those stories so people just understand what's truly going on as opposed to what you hear in the media.
yeah. These are regular, average women, I kid you not. Cookie, bacon, running my kids around the school, trying to keep my house clean, trying to stay up on top of my laundry. Regular, average women who just need basic health care. And I know Republicans don't like to say that abortion is health care, but it really is when your life is on the line or when they want you to give birth to a stillborn, that type of thing. Um, because that's very, very dangerous if you know that this fetus has passed away and you are refusing to remove it.
Well,
Um,
and if it's not
it's
healthcare, what the hell is it?
traumatizing.
If it's not healthcare, what the hell is
I,
it?
I guess it's just a bunch of women that, for whatever reason, just want to have an abortion for fun, I guess. I don't know why they think that, but I did hear somebody on Fox News say if you put sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot,
Wow.
Democrats are going to win every time. Abortion is not sexy, but they really do think like, 6 months we just wake up one day and take down the nursery, take down the crib. I don't want this baby anymore. That does not happen. It doesn't.
Well,
It's some real situations where they don't have a choice.
and and when it, and when the average Joe is watching the media and they go abortion this, abortion that, it's illegal, it's not illegal, exceptions, all this stuff. People don't know the
Mhm.
specifics about it. They just hear the noise about abortion. That's why it's important. Somebody like you gives out specific stories because it's one thing to talk about abortion.
Yeah,
It's real easy for me to go, "Oh yeah, abortion. I'm not for that," or I'm for it." It's easy for me because I'm an old white guy sitting in my living room. But if you really understand, if I, as an old white guy who's just watching this on TV, here's a story, like what you just told, I'm going, holy fuck, that shit's got to stop. And that's how I
Yeah.
feel about it. I mean, it's absolutely crazy that we're doing this in this country. It says a lot about the Republican Party and
Yeah.
how draconian and how cruel they are. And you said you felt like they were attacking women. After hearing these stories, I don't think there's any question
Yeah.
they are attacking women.
Yeah, I heard someone on a podcast earlier who said that Republican men, they don't hate women, they love women. Look at all the affairs that they have and, all this other kind of stuff, but they don't love women's rights. They don't want us to have control over our bodies. They don't like that we go to school. They don't like certain jobs that we have. So they like or they love women. They just don't love us to have rights. And I thought that was more fitting than saying that they hate women. They just hate our rights.
Well, they may just hate your rights, but I think the important thing is whether they hate or they love women is beside the point. They have no respect for women. They
Mhm.
don't see women as equals
That's
or
true.
peers.
Right.
They see you as, property, like a dog or a
Hmm.
cat or a house or a car. And that sounds
Yeah.
crazy that anybody would say that. But all you have to do is look at their behavior toward women. And while they won't say that or admit it, their behavior proves that that's the
Yeah.
case.
Hmm. And they have no, because when you think about Ken Paxton, when I was thinking about this, he could have scored points with the evangelicals and far right extremists if he would have made her go to court like she did. And once the judge ruled what she ruled, he could have just said, that's what the judge ruled. But he took it that extra mile in
Right.
appealing the judge's decision. So he didn't, he could, like he could have just said, you know what? We went to the judge. This is what the judge said. She meets the exception, especially someone who is supposed to be pro law and order,
Right.
the judge made her decision. It is what it is. He took it further. He didn't even respect the judge. You know what I mean? So that just goes to show the real, I don't know how to describe the way that he feels about women, but that the disdain that he had for
Right.
this woman.
Well, exactly. And that's the problem with the Republicans, and this is a very important issue. It's not about what's right. It's about what I want, and I want it now, and I want it the way I want it. Whether that's right or not, it makes no
Yeah.
difference. I want it the way I want it because we're dealing with egos and personalities, people who enjoy power, and they feel like
Mhm.
uh, pushing this power on somebody like you or another woman is a way they prove that they're powerful. And it's fucking absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, what Ken Paxton did, or any of these other people in
Mhm.
other states, and this is why I hate them so much, they are the epitome of bullies. They're the
Yeah.
epitome of bullies. And bullies need to get their ass knocked on their asses. And that's why I say the election thing is
Yeah.
only part of it. Um, if we can get deeper into this, some of these people in normal situations prior to all this other bullshit, what they're doing is committing crimes against you and then calling you
Yeah.
the criminal.
Mhm.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and they're not making it even across the board either. Because the Duggars, right?
Yeah.
His I think the one girl, Jill Duggar, she was recently pregnant not that long ago, and she went to the hospital, found out that her baby was non-viable, and the doctors told her that she could pass the fetus at home, like Brittany Watts did. And she just said, because of some past experience that she had, she felt safer doing it at the hospital or having the doctor do the DNC for her. And on her YouTube page, when she posted that video, I looked at the comment section and all of these women were like, oh, it must be nice to be able to go to your hospital and get your DNC because my sister couldn't get one. And you started hearing about all these stories in that comment section. And I thought, why is she allowed to go to the hospital and get a DNC by choice when her doctor didn't even recommend it? But you have other women who are being prosecuted when their doctor does recommend it. And she's in Arkansas, so she's not in Texas or Ohio. But it just goes to show that they're picking and choosing
Right.
which women they want to target and go after. And I don't know exactly what they make their choices on, because I could look at like Brittany Watts and say, oh yeah, I can see why they chose her. But then when you think about Cox from Texas, she doesn't fit the profile of a woman that they would target.
Meaning
So
she
that
me,
kind of
me,
threw
meaning
me off
she's
my
a
game a little bit.
meaning she's a middle class white girl. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't want to say that.
No, go ahead
I
and
did
say it.
not want to say that.
That's the fucking fact, man. That's what it is. You're
She didn't fit.
you're
She didn't look
suggesting.
like someone that they could.
Don't laugh. I mean,
Yeah, she didn't fit the bill.
it falls in line with who they
And
are.
she had resources. Yeah, she had resources. The women that I see, they don't typically have resources to fight it and take it to court. You know what I mean? They don't have that luxury, shall I say. But when you look at somebody like Cox, she has the resources, she's middle-aged white woman. The fact that they targeted her, I can't wrap my mind around why her. And then I think, as horrible as it is, you can say if they can do that to her and look at her and look at her situation and her circumstances, and you can say if they're doing that to her, they can literally do it to any and everybody. So nobody should feel safe at this point. Middle class white women, PTA moms, you're not safe because they can target you too. And this is a prime example of that. So I'm happy that she spoke out. It was very brave of her to do, but when she goes back to Texas, I have no idea what she's facing, or I don't know what her husband is facing either, because from my understanding, Paxton was talking about he aided and abetted, and they have those bounty laws in Texas. So I don't know.
Do you th-
I have no idea.
do you think the fact? I mean, we know Republicans are racist. That just goes without saying. And what we're suggesting here is that,
Mhm,
uh, that it's harder on poor black women or poor women of color than it is a
mhm.
middle-aged white woman. Is the fact that Katie Cox, middle-aged, middle-class white woman, do you see that as a benefit as far as exposing this bullshit to the entire country? It's sad that that would have to be a plus, but I have to think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think if anything came out of her, anything positive, if you can look at it that way, that came out of what happened to her, it's the exposing that no woman is safe.
Right,
Because I do think a lot of women felt safe, and it brought light to the exceptions, and that they don't mean what they're telling you that it means.
right,
They like Kim Paxton, if he would have just let the judge's decision stand and let Miss Cox get her procedure, they would have had that talking point, the life of the mother. When
right,
he took it to the Supreme Court and did what he did, he completely took away the talking point, life of the mother. He took away that whole exceptions talking point. He single-handedly took that talking point away.
right.
So if there's anything decent that you can take out of her experience, is it completely exposed that part of the hypocrisy from the Republican Party.
We're going to wrap things up here in a minute, but I wanted to ask you this. I've said all along, and I would know because I'm an old white guy, so I got to know it all.
Mhm.
But my perception is that if nothing else was going on, just this Roe v. Wade issue is enough to sink the Republicans in 2024. I can't, in my wildest dreams,
Yeah,
imagine any woman voting Republican when these fucks have already taken a constitutional right away from you. And I've said, I don't care what constitutional right it is. If the government takes one away from you, that should be a huge red flag because they're going to take more and then they're going to take
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Um, as a woman who's particularly sensitive to this topic, do you see do you see it this issue having as big an effect on the election as I do?
I definitely do, and all you have to do is look at the special elections and the red wave that didn't happen.
Right.
You can look at any credible reporting on how Americans feel about this subject, and you can see it's not a divide, it's not a split.
No,
A majority of Americans are pro-abortion, and the fact that they double down and triple down on it, and not only that, but they are completely unwilling to correct the loopholes or the gaps there. So you can sit there like Paxton could have said, the exception for the life of the mother, we need to tweak that, or we need to fix that a little bit because we don't want any woman to be in this situation. Even if he didn't mean it, all
right.
he had to do was just say it, but he wouldn't even do that.
No,
So the fact that they're unwilling to even compromise, um, make corrections, curtail the laws better, the fact that you're taking away medical professionals and putting a woman's life in the hands of a politician, that is huge. It's what he did is so huge. And it's in a negative way for them. And
right.
right now they're hiding Donald Trump when he's only doing these friendly interviews. But if he wins this primary, he's gonna have to take a stance on Roe v. Wade one way or the other. And if he doesn't, we only have his past statements to go on. And his past statements are now Republicans can bargain that I've overturned Roe v. Wade.
I
We
did
have his
it. I'm
past
the good
statements of
guy.
taking credit for overturning Roe. Yep. And then also we have his statement saying that there should be some punishment for the woman.
Right,
So unless he comes out and he says something different, we only have his past statements to go on. And
right.
I'm betting my bottom dollar that the Biden administration put his words into ads and run them all
Uh,
over this country.
Oh, no
So he's
question
gonna
about it.
have to sooner or later take a position. He's
Did
not
did
gonna do that. Republicans, you just said earlier, Ted Cruz is running away from it. They are refusing to talk about it, but they talk so dang much. We still have their previous statements on record
right.
that we can use against them. And it seems like every other week, every other month, especially with the situation in Texas, we have a reminder of what their words said and what their actions did.
Well, that's a
It's a
wonderful thing
huge
about
difference in the election.
that's a
Huge.
wonderful thing about the Republicans. They want to push this anti-abortion thing. They want to do these draconian things, but when they're asked about it, let's not talk about it. Let's keep it on the DL.
Mm.
They went to John Cornyn, a senator from Texas. They asked him about it. He said, "Look, I work on the federal level. I don't know shit about the state. I stand by the state laws." That is a gutless fucking answer. And again, I often steal from Chrissy Teigen, her comment about Donald Trump, and it applies to John Cornyn. You're a pussy ass bitch. That's what you are. But then, like you said, they talked to Ted
But who
Cruz, and
who's
Ted
gonna
said,
believe them? Yeah, who's gonna believe them when they said these are state issues? We're gonna give this back to the states. And as soon as you left it up to the states, what did they say? Now we need a national ban.
right.
So the fact that he's saying I believe in state rights, but then he's supporting a national ban, that's not gonna work either, Courtney.
Well, and that's the thing. And John Cornyn, you're being asked about something, and yes, you're on the federal level, and this is dealing on the state, but you are a U.S. senator from that state, and this issue is
Yep.
yours. If anybody should have
Hmm.
an opinion, it should be fucking you. And he doesn't, because he doesn't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. He thinks it's going to cost him votes. And that dumb fuck should know it's going to cost him votes. And hopefully it does.
Hmm.
I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure it will. I'm pretty sure it's I think some of these people are safe in their heads, and for the most part, you do have some like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, they're pretty safe. When you look at some of these maps, you know some of these people are not going anywhere.
Right.
However, there's been some major upsets lately, and I try to give grace to Republican women. I really do, because I'm seeing them show up and vote and make sure that these rights are enshrined in their constitutions, and they're waking up, and the Republicans keep giving them more and more reason to fight. And
Right.
I don't think that a lot of these women, especially with certain churches and environments that they're in, they don't recognize the reason that Republicans want to strip them from their power because they know how powerful these women are, but they
Right.
don't know it.
Right.
But they're learning it now when they when their voices are making a difference, when their votes are making a difference. They're starting to see that they have more power than they think. It's sad that it has to come at the cost of health and lives and everything, but I see them waking up and I see them doing the right thing. And I do tell them if any Republican women are listening, put on your MAGA hat, your red shirt, go into the voting booth and vote your conscience. And you don't have to tell anybody who you voted for. You can tell your husband you voted for Trump and you can vote for Biden. He's not going to know that.
Right.
So if you're scared to talk about that, you can still do the right thing. You don't have to broadcast it. I do advocate for that.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
can wear red and vote blue. Not a
Absolutely.
problem.
You're allowed. As people from the blue
Yes,
side,
you're right.
we grant you that opportunity. Well, we're gonna wrap things up, and I'm always glad when you're on the show, but particularly on this topic. I can talk about Roe v. Wade and all that stuff, the general terms, but I don't know enough about it. So it's good fortune for me here with the podcast and all of the people listening to get some real insights of somebody who knows exactly what's going on. And it's important that we all know this because it is serious and it is dangerous and is not what America was built on. This is not who we are.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, you could have. You've been doing that, but I thank you for that. All right. Um, I thank Old Soul for joining me on the show today. Uh, just to get this down, you're okay with coming on a regular basis, maybe even a weekly basis if you're available. You're good with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you're ready, let me
Uh,
know. I work from home. I'm pretty flexible.
all
The
right.
women that stay with me, they always have, appointments in the daytime, not at night. So I'm pretty flexible.
All right. We'll work that out. For those of you listening, thank you
Yep.
for taking the time out of your day to listen. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.